I'd like to thank the organizers for inviting RAP and myself in particular to come along and speak today and join you for the whole 2 days. Secondly, very intelligent group of people. I'm not sure if anything in here is going to be new to you. It might be just taken a little further along the way to give you some more ideas about what's going on. And what I'm really here to do today is to try and help you sort of avoid some of the bigger potholes on the road to success. Do you call them potholes here? Is that a UK term? I'm a Canadian, you see, but I've kind of been UKized by living there for I don't know how long, and I've lost control of which things are relevant in which places. I just want to tell you a little bit about RAP first of all, because I've had a few people ask me about that today. RAP, our vision, is a world where resources are used sustainably, and we've sort of moved away from the waste hierarchy now, because we talk about resources, not about waste. And we talk about reinventing how we design things. We talk about rethinking about our consumption of products, and we talk about redefining what we can do to reuse and recycle. So we still have 3 R's, but they're not the same 3 R's as they used to be. To give you the patter, so this is the bit that I get from the PR people when I leave RAP and come to talk to you about us. It says here, we're a world leader in resource efficiency, product sustainability, waste and recycling. We're known for our expertise in partnership, the ability to turn ideas into action, and our initiatives bring together businesses, governments, trade associations, communities, trusts, foundations to deliver change. I don't think I left anybody out, did I? But the whole point is that we work really well together with people, and one of our main points is we're able to congeal, but I mean get people to converge on ideas. And we don't just work in food, we also work in textiles and products. I want to say a little bit about the drivers. I think this picture kind of summarizes the challenges we're facing here. So essentially the population is growing all the time. I think we're around 7 billion, and it's forecast to get to at least 9 billion by my lifetime, right? That's if I live to be 100. At the same time, we're having a lot more urbanization. A lot of North America, for example, the US, about 83% urbanized already, but across the world, it's going to be 66% by 2050. That's having a huge impact on the way food and people react to food and how they access it and how we're going to produce it for them. Finally, we've got the developing world, which is seeing, the developed world, sorry, which is seeing a significant single family dwelling arrangement. I talked about this in some of the groups I've been in, but it is a big demographic, a lot more single person households and things like that happening. And finally, we've got the whole carbon issue and global warming. So what does that mean? Well, we know, for example, that about a third of all the weight of food that we produce is being wasted in the world. That's about 1.3 billion tons. Each year, the consumers in the rich world waste about as much as food as could be consumed from the whole of sub-Sahara Africa. Get rid of all that starvation going on there. And you've seen this number before. I've seen 780, I've seen 890, I've seen 842, this one on my page. That's a number of people that are currently malnutritioned, but what you don't often see from the McKinsey report is that there were 2.3 billion people that are classified as obese. So we've got a world where we've got 2.3 billion people obese, but we've got 850,000 people who don't have enough food. There's something really wrong going on there that we've got to fix. And finally, if food was a country in the world, it would be the 3rd largest emitter of carbon. So every day, water, energy, time, land, fertilizer, fuel, packaging, and money are all being wasted in growing, preparing, sorting, transporting, cooking of food. It's just, there's something really wrong here, and we've got to do something about it. So we're on this mission at RAP to make a difference. So what are we doing? That's what I asked to talk about today. So we looked at it. I've got a pie chart here. It's a bit different than the one for Canada. But what it shows is that consumers in the UK are responsible for about 46% of the food waste. Food manufacturing is about 26%. Retailers, interestingly, in our calculations, are only responsible for a small percent, which is 2%. However, they have a huge impact on the supply chain. So getting them involved early is one of the key things that makes a difference. And then we've got hospitality and food service, which again, the way we did the calculations is smaller, only 6%, and pre-farm gate and litter, people throwing food away on the road and stuff like that, we calculated it around 20, but that's probably the least clear calculation we have. So the question is, what did we do? Well, we started with various things, which I wanted to share with you. So first of all, let's look a little bit at Love Food, Hate Waste. I won't take very long on this because Peter already gave you a really great explanation of how Love Food, Hate Waste works. But essentially, it's all about messaging to people things. So, who ate all the pies? Well, you didn't because you threw most of them away, right? So it's kind of a gentle reminder that people aren't quite getting what's happening, and then classifying where they're wasting food. Peter had his thing. We were looking at the numbers of bread that's wasted, things like that. Bread's a high on the list, potatoes are second highest, milk's very high. This is really useful, A, because it helps us talk to the people that are wasting it in the actual home, but it also helps talking to people like supermarkets because they're interested in where they could act the most to make the biggest difference as well. This is an example of actually tracking those behaviors that Peter talked about, and you can see in here that the behaviors are being tracked, understanding the best before date, and understanding what checking the cupboard means and getting your shopping list ready, all that sort of thing. People were changing, and over that period, I think we had about a 20% reduction in food waste. That was 2007 to 2011. I've got a few factors later to see the whole numbers, but these behaviors do make a difference. Now, I'm not saying that these behaviors changed everything, but they were changing, and while they were changing, people were actually reducing their food waste, and we did this both by diaries and by regular surveys, and also by checking before and after by looking in people's bins, the nasty bit of all this. But it's a really interesting factor to realize. A couple other examples I wanted to share with you. So I told you about our hospitality and food service earlier. It's only 6%, but this is a quote from the general manager at Crieff Hydro. It's a very big 4-star hotel with 213 rooms, 500 staff, 5 restaurants, where we got them interested in thinking about what they were doing about food waste, and they used some technology I'm going to talk about later called Win Now, where they basically were able to measure the amount of food they were wasting. Often in the food business, people calculate what it costs to get the meal on the table, but they don't think about the cost of the bit that the people didn't eat that they threw away, which could be profit for them if they thought it through a bit more. So essentially, they measured it regularly. That allowed them to have feedback. I don't think you can see the graphs. I'm sure we're going to make this available afterwards, I think, so you'll be able to get it on the website somewhere. But you can see that on the top, they had a 31% reduction in the food by weight, and they also made a 43% reduction in food by value. And essentially what it showed was if they carried on when they got to the week 8, and they did it for a whole year, they'd save 51,000 pounds food cost to themselves in the way that they were running their breakfast buffets and things like that. They came up with ideas. It gave the staff something to talk about, it gave the head chef something to think about, and by doing things like reducing how much they put out when, doing more batch and less single preparation, it made a really big difference. So that was what was happening in the hospitality and food service, and there's loads of case studies on our website if you want to look at that. Now this is a really interesting one because people have talked about this before, and we did go a bit past the farm gate here. This is one where we looked at the whole supply chain for potatoes because the amount of waste that's involved in potatoes. And you can see up there, we looked at harvesting, we looked at storage, we looked at grading, and we looked at retail. And essentially, by going through the whole thing, it was a 3-year project in all, took quite a while to do, but we identified that the overall things like reducing the size of potato screening by a couple of millimeters allowed another 100,000 pounds worth of potatoes to get through, 100,000 pounds worth of potatoes at the retail level. So that was 100,000 pounds of sold product that were being rejected simply by the way the supermarkets were asking the potatoes to be screened. And to be honest with you, a consumer can't tell if a potato is 2 or 3 millimeters bigger or smaller. It just doesn't really come in. They can't tell that difference. So by making that change, they were able to get more money there. They also did things like reducing the packaging. That solved the costs of transport, and all they saved about 40,000 pounds a year on the packaging side. They used trickle tape for watering on this farm instead of spraying it. That reduced their water consumption by 30%. And all, they found 600,000 pounds a year that they could save if they did all these changes in their own supply chain, and it could have been a lot more if everybody that was selling potatoes and buying them could do it. So by working across and using a systemic approach, which our facilitator highlighted to us earlier, and thinking about the problem and not getting too siloed, as somebody's highlighted, you can make a real difference. And then finally, I wanted to say, well, not quite finally, almost, I wanted to say that the other thing that's really great is things are happening without our direct intervention. So these two ladies you can see here, they developed an app called Olio in the UK. And they came to me originally and said, oh, we want to do this great, recycled product sharing thing where we got all these raw materials coming out of the waste stream. We can set up a sort of a huge database and everybody can get all these products and use them again. And they decided afterwards, they were McKinsey management consultants that were doing various other things, that maybe this wasn't going to work. And then one of them moved and they couldn't find anybody to give the food that was left in their refrigerator to on the day they left their home. And they thought, gosh, there's something here. So they created this peer-to-peer food sharing thing that they started in London called Olio, where you take a picture of the food you want to share, and then the person who wants to take it sends a little message to you. It's very local neighborhood. There's a map. You can see where the food is. You can either go to them or you can go to a little collection box and you've got the food. You could sell it to them. You could give it to them. It's your choice. I know there's loads of health issues here, but they don't seem to have come up so far. It's run really well. They've had 5,000 downloads. It's working in London. They're moving it to Brighton. They're doing it in Bristol. They're thinking about doing it in lots of other places. It's a great idea. And the other thing is, I'm talking a bit about it, it's created loads of neighborhood involvement, like, oh, you can take the same train as I do to work every morning. I didn't realize you only live 3 doors away, and community stuff's happening. The other one's the technology I mentioned before. Another McKinsey consultant got involved in doing some work on food waste, and they saw an opportunity, so they went out and developed a product which weighs all the food through a simple tablet weighing system for restaurants and chefs. They're now selling it, and I think they're claiming that they've managed to save the purchases of their kit so far, a little over a year, about £2 million. They've avoided 1 million wasted meals, and they've reduced carbon emissions by 2,700 tons. And that's because we created the awareness, we got things going, and now the best business is seeing opportunities and they're going for it. Incidentally, Olio has got some venture capital money somehow. I'm not quite sure where the finance model comes in, but they've got it. So these are the things that we've actually achieved, and up to 2011, we're about to run the end of our next cycle, so I could tell you more about that, but at the moment, I can't say where we are because it's all hush-hush until we announce it to the members of Courthold and the other programs I described, but some pretty impressive savings there. And just going forward, we're going to launch our next Courthold now, where we're covering the whole supply chain, so we're going to look at how we lower the impact of products by changing the design, and how you buy it. We're going to look at how you can do supply chain optimization, more of those potato studies. We're going to look at how we work with the consumers and help with the messaging. And we're also looking at what we can do, as highlighted earlier, when you get to the end of supply chain with the stuff when it comes out. So the other thing, just to give you a bit of background with WRAP, we don't just do stuff on food waste in the UK. We're also working with UNEP on a program where we've written some guidance, and we're working on some pilots in Saudi Arabia, South Africa, Panama on food waste minimizations with those governments. We're also running something called Refresh, which is about trying to replicate the Courthold commitment across Europe. And the Champions 12.3 is the 12.3 sustainable objective, where we're working with world leaders to see how we can reduce food waste right across the world. So that's a whistle-stop tour. Those are the tips you want to make sure. Clear strategy, build the partnerships, and measure the impact. And believe me, if you can do those 3 things, it'll work every time, I promise. Okay?